welcome to the August episode of Here's the Stitch. We've got 3 segments for you, like I always do. We are going to chat with Allison, this lovely human on the screen with me. We're going to talk about a new pattern that she's releasing in this first segment. The second segment will be me going over what I've been working on. And then the third segment, we're going to talk about the trend of vests. So maybe Allison's got some things to add to that in the beginning part here. So because they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And I was like, why? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But let's start with Allison. Allison, welcome to the podcast. It is good to see you.
It's so good to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I am a knit and crochet designer living in Providence, Rhode Island. And I have been doing that for a long time now. It's kind of been great recently. I've reconnected with a lot of people that I started working with like way back in like the early 2000s, and I don't know how much I want to talk about that because maybe it like dates me a little bit, but I don't care because, you know, it's all been good and it's all flown by, which is wild. So, yeah.
Awesome. So how did you come to learn to knit and crochet?
Yeah. I actually learned how to crochet first. My grandmother taught me, although I don't remember my grandmother ever crocheting. So I think she just wanted to give me something to do. And knew how, apparently. And she didn't really teach me how to make anything. I would literally, it's just like crochet in a spiral and make it around, and then
Like just a really long worm?
and go for like, well, it was like a disc kind of like,
Okay.
I think she must have taught me how to increase, I guess. I don't know. I just remember making like literally like a disc and then ripping it out, and when I like ran out of yarn or something, and then doing it again, which is really weird. But knitting was what really took hold for a really long time, starting when I was a teenager. And I was in a play in school, like a one-act student-directed play, and I was playing a little old lady who knit. And I always loved craft, like arts and crafts, all of that stuff. So I thought, oh, I'll just learn how to really knit because I was supposed to be knitting during the play. And my best friend taught me how, and I just became like totally obsessed. I made like garter stitch scarves for like everybody that I knew. And I was lucky that I had a really lovely yarn shop in the town where I grew up, Lexington, Massachusetts. And it's sadly not there anymore. But it was called Wild and Woolly. And they had really, really nice yarns. So I think I developed a taste for like good wool from a pretty young age.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was really self-taught on like everything advanced. And I started like teaching knitting in college because it was like this weird thing that I did at the time. Like there weren't very many college students knitting. But
You were
people
teaching like other students, friends?
yeah, teaching other students. It was cool. The school that I went to, they had like this program called mini courses that anybody in the whole college community, like students, staff, teachers could offer any mini course that they wanted, and you could like charge money for it if you wanted to, although some of them were free. And I think I charged like $15 for like 4 sessions. And then and I got so many people to sign up that the next semester I bumped up the price to like $17, and I added like more sections, like more groups of it, because I felt like I could only teach like maybe 6 people at a time then. So, but it was, yeah, that was how I started teaching,
Nice.
which is still a big thing for me. I love doing that.
Awesome. So where in there did you evolve to creating your own patterns?
So I eventually got a job at a yarn shop. Well, I got a disastrous job at a really bad yarn shop that is also no longer in existence. It was on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. I was living in New York in my 20s, and I was working for this like insane woman for like a very brief time, but it got me into like working at a yarn shop. And then I got a really cool yarn shop job at this very, very unusual store called School Products, which doesn't even sound like a yarn store, but it was in like an office building. and it was started by the same person who, a woman named Berta Karapetian, who had also started a yarn company called Carabella Yarns, and she hired me for the shop, but then she basically hired me to start writing patterns that she was designing, and I would just literally like, the way I learned how to write patterns was just, I was like literally reading Vogue Knitting magazine, like reading the patterns, like just, and like figuring out like how to say things. And then like I also, for many years, you know, then and later was teaching knitting, and I don't know, I think it, like designing, like the actual sort of creative part of designing came, like it was like, first it was like, oh, I kind of want to make something like this, but I want to change the neckline, or, you know, change however, and then I just started having ideas and figuring out, you know, and there were definitely a lot of failed projects through there, but yeah, just started making stuff up, and then parallel learning how to write a pattern, and teaching, I think, also helped me learn how to write a good pattern, because I used to teach at another yarn shop in Massachusetts, in Newburyport. I used to teach like just a drop-in knitting class where you could bring whatever project, and you know, and people would bring whatever pattern they were working on that they were having trouble with, and it was often, you know, like, oh, it's not you, it's the pattern, because like, well, one, like it's wrong, or two, but or even just like, oh, okay, yeah, like that's confusing the way they explained that. So I started like figuring out best practices of knitting and crochet patterns, and I actually also became a technical editor at the same time, because I just felt like the specificity of making really good instructions was always really important to me, and still is.
Yeah. When I first started knitting, somebody told me, if you find a free pattern, it's free for a reason. I was like, yeah. Which isn't always true, but it can be.
Well, it's, you know, it is free for a reason. The reason might be, you know, like somebody just didn't care about making any money from the pattern, but like sometimes it's also like they didn't want to have to be on the hook for pattern support, like helping people with it, or, you know, whatever the reason is. But yes, often it's quality.
Yep. So you've always, like, your livelihood has always been this community, or no? It sounds like it.
I have basically always had like at least a part of my livelihood that was yarn related. It wasn't always my full job, or, you know, like I for many years was sort of piecing together a few different things. And I was, you know, like totally unrelated, like theater major in school, and was trying to be like a director or a stage manager, and that didn't work out. But yeah, but I've been doing knitting stuff pretty much full time since so I was at Barocco Yarns for 11 years, and ended that just this spring. So that's been like full time, where it was like a job that I went to. But prior to that, I had like a 10-15 hour a week part-time job. And then I was doing, you know, designing and tech editing and stuff, like, and teaching knitting stuff the rest of the time.
Nice.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the difference in the design process for Barocco, because versus what you're doing now on your own.
Yeah.
It's always been my understanding that large yarn companies like that, it's almost like the pattern comes first. Like it's all written and then it can be sent off to actually like make a product that hopefully looks like the designer intended. So let's talk a little bit about that versus what you're doing now, and what you did with us, like start to finish, all yours, your process, your timeline, that kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah. I think one of the big differences is, working for a yarn company. It's like you have a yarn and you need to sell the yarn. So it's like, okay, well, who do we think is the customer for this yarn? Like, what kind of things do they want to make? So it was really like, it was actually kind of in a way easier because now I'm like, well, I can design anything that I want to with any yarn in the whole world, you know, and so it's kind of like sometimes having those like, you know, guardrails or, you know, like the things you have to do make it in a way like easier to just like solve the problem, and then like you can have the creativity through that. So that was like sort of one big difference. But then in terms of the nuts and bolts of it, we were producing like every season. So we would have 2 seasons a year, and each season we would our team of 3, for most of the time that I was there, we had around 3 or 4 designers working on a collection that was usually anywhere from like 55 to 70 patterns for the season, plus a bunch of like free patterns. Sometimes free patterns are there to sell the yarn. And then, and so it was a huge volume of work, and it was certainly more than we could knit ourselves. So we did just a lot of swatching, and then, we're writing patterns for sample knitters, and I had done a little bit of that before I was at Barocco with another yarn company that I did some collections for. But it's an interesting process to be making, to be designing and writing a pattern for something that you're not knitting yourself. It's oddly enough, like sweaters are easier to do that with, for me anyway, than a lot of accessories, because like with a hat, I would usually just knit it myself because it was like, well, that's not going to take me long to knit, and I can a lot of times like figure out how the shaping needs to be. It's just easier in a way to just knit it myself at that point.
Yeah, the tactile of the crown decreases is easier to figure out that way versus like trying to write it out and be like,
so with accessories, sometimes it was easier to just do it, just knit it ourselves. But a sweater, in a way, I mean, unless you're doing a really unusual construction or one that you just aren't as familiar with yet, I felt like it was easier to just learn, like, okay, like I know what the proportions need to be, like, and then it's just math at that point. So it was pretty interesting. But at the same time, like working with a sample knitter, it was always, it was tricky to both find people who were just really skilled enough to make sure they were really truly getting gauge. One of the things we learned is how common it is for people to have a different gauge in the round versus flat, because we'd have, like, for example, a cardigan where it's seamless and the sleeves would be way tighter than the body. And then it's like, well, like a lot of really tight sleeves. That was a common issue. And then sometimes it was our fault too. It was like we would have the patterns tech edited before we sent them out to sample knitters, at least in the sample size, but we wouldn't always catch everything, and so then there would always be this like scramble of like making sure we're helping them through what needs to happen. So it was a fascinating process. I learned so much in my years there.
Nice. That process of just kind of writing it out and sending it off to somebody, I find incredibly interesting. That's not how my brain works. I did a very, very, very small amount of designing myself. And for me, the hardest part was taking what I was knitting and translating that into actual words that could be then interpreted to actually get a shoulder or something like that. Because I can just visualize it. I can just do it.
Yeah.
And then translating that into words was always my challenge.
I think that is a huge challenge for a lot of designers, like, because usually designers are people who are like really excellent knitters or crocheters, and so it's like you can easily make something like it was a longer road, I think, for me with crochet, just because I started designing crochet later. Like, crochet is so much wordier, and so like it takes me so much longer to write. Even now, it takes me so much longer to write a crochet pattern, because it's like the way you have to explain everything. It's like, because it's partly because crochet is so much more freeform. Like, you can put the hook in like all kinds of different places. So you have to explain like both where you're making the stitch and what the stitch is and whatever else is going on. So, and I think there's also just different ways that crocheters and knitters approach patterns. But anyway, yeah, it's definitely a fascinating process. I think when I'm tech editing, I always have to, it's like you have to turn off the part of your brain that can like fill in the details of like, oh, I know what they're doing. It's like, and you have to put yourself in the mindset of like, okay, like what is like literally on the page?
Yeah.
I had a guy I used to know who was a program, like a like a software programmer. He used to do, I ran a youth group with him, and he used to do an activity sometimes with the youth where it was an illustration of how to write code, which is very similar, I think, to writing patterns, where he would say, okay, you're going to explain to that person how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But the person who's doing it is not allowed to do anything that is not exactly what you're telling. You have to tell them every single step, like pick up, like open the bread, like take out 2 slices of bread, like, and so it's like, it's kind of the same thing with writing patterns. It's like, you just have to be really literal. And it's a weird process.
Yeah. And then sometimes that very literal can also be confusing.
Yes.
I've run into that several times recently where I'm like, wait, what? And then I just read it and do it in that exact order. And it's like, oh, that's not how I would have done that, but I got it now. Like, this makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's true too. Like, different brains work really differently in terms of like how they might approach doing the same thing. And yeah, that can be challenging.
German short rows, in my opinion, are the perfect example. You're not actually doing anything. But somehow you've got to tell somebody to do something without actually doing anything. Like, which I think is why people struggle with German short rows until...
It's interesting.
Like, right? Because you're not doing anything. You're just turning and moving your yarn. And
kind of like, it's almost like the finesse part of it, of moving it and like kind of pulling it in a certain way. The thing that I think is hilarious about German short rows, and I actually haven't designed that much with German short rows until recently, and now I'm like, I love them so much. I'm like, why did I ever wrap and turn? But what I think is funny about them is it's actually the thing that a lot of beginner knitters do by accident at the beginning of a row. Like, the first time I did it, I was like, oh, this is just the thing that I always had to explain to them. Like, no, you have to have your yarn like this. And it's like, no, but if you have your yarn like that, it like makes this double stitch.
Yep.
It's like, amazing. Who thought of that?
I don't know. So let's talk about the pattern you designed for us that we're both wearing.
Yes,
I think you see it better on you.
And I love that we're wearing it like with really different amounts of ease. Like, I made mine like, well, here, I'll like stand up a moment. You can see I have like tons and tons of ease on mine because I basically my reason for wanting to design this was that
mine is definitely more fitted.
Yeah, and I think it looks great both ways. I really like them both, and I love that blue. That's so pretty.
Thanks.
But I was seeing like actually, especially at Barocco, our assistant designer Mel Kennelly, who I adore. She had designed some like sort of popovers, and she modeled them too in some cases, and they always looked so cute on her. And whenever she would come into the office like wearing one, I'd be like, oh, I need to make one of those. Like, and I just never got around to it. I mean, you were talking about like vests. Like, I just don't, it's like, it's been I've had to like really adjust my thinking about vests because I think for a long time I was like, ew, vests. And now I'm like, oh, vests.
Yeah. There's no sleeves.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I'm going to talk about in the third segment. Like, I feel like, one, they're incredibly popular because of their versatility. You can style them in so many different ways. They're really easy seasonal transitional pieces. You can wear them all the time. But I also think that the popularity of them right now is because of this oversized look. This oversized shirt, particularly summer short sleeve shirts, that are essentially just cap sleeves.
Right. Exactly.
Which is a vest. So I think that's part of why they've become so popular in the knitting community, because they really just are an evolution of the summer tee, that I think is just becoming more and more and more popular.
Yeah.
But yeah, in a more traditional sense, it's, as slightly more fitted. They're perfect layering pieces.
Yeah.
I personally hate winter coats. I live in North Carolina. Winter coats aren't exactly like super necessary here like they are in Rhode Island, but I love a vest, a puffer vest. My arms move. It's amazing.
That's so true. I wish I had known how great vests were. Like several years ago, I had a really cool jacket that I got from a secondhand, like a thrift store. But the arms were like a little tight on me, and it was like a winter jacket, but I couldn't really wear sweaters under because it was too tight. And I'm like, if only I had known about vests, I could have popped on a vest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, tell me a little bit about your experience working with Lada. I believe you've never worked with it before.
Correct.
So yeah, talk a little bit about like this actual pattern.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love Lada. It's so good. So I didn't know about it until I met you at the H&H trade show in Chicago in May, and I love a sport weight. I feel like it's such a great like medium weight. I do tend to favor sort of smaller needles and like less chunky things typically. So like a sport weight's just lovely. And I love, like, it's got a really beautiful roundness to it that really is so, this makes the stitch definition really lovely. And my aesthetic, like the kinds of things I like to design usually are, I like a lot of like pretty little stitches. So it was really ideal for that. And I love a non-superwash as well, which I feel like particularly in the hand dye market, it's so much superwash because the superwash, it really helps, I guess, with the color saturation. But the color saturation on this is so nice. And it's a non-superwash. I just find like superwash wools, for me, a lot of times they don't behave the way I want. Maybe it's just because I grew up on like non-superwash wool. So like superwash often like it'll kind of like stretch out or it gets weird. I don't know. I don't like it. So, and I hand wash all my sweaters anyway. So I love a superwash, and I just really love the color effect. Like, I tend to not really go for the multicolor like look. It's just not for me. So this sort of like tonal, like it's mostly even in the skein, it actually looked even more solid than like knit up. But I think the color is gorgeous. So yeah, I had such a good experience working with it. I will definitely work with it again. Beautiful.
Awesome. Happy to hear that. It was actually a comment I got a lot at H&H that I really wasn't expecting. I almost had a couple of store owners challenge me on whether or not it was actually non-superwash. They're like, you can't get that color on non-superwash. I'm like,
and you're like, I can.
Gotta do things a little differently, but you can. Awesome. Yeah. So it needs a little extra dye, a little extra finesse, a little extra time, but yeah, can absolutely do it.
And I know very little about dyeing except kind of like what I learned from like yarn selection and testing stuff at Barocco, but like like when you say like a little extra dye, I'm like, but it doesn't, it seems really color fast. Like it doesn't seem like it's released, like when I, like it doesn't seem like it releases a lot of dye or anything like that, which is great. I love to see that. So.
Yeah, you've got to really you've got to use more dye to get more penetration, and then just give it some extra time to fully absorb all of that. So
It's really beautiful.
yeah, thanks. All right. We're running way over time, but do you have any projects you're working on that you want to share real quick?
I don't have anything I can really probably show you except for, I mean, I can just show on screen. I'm re-releasing an old, it doesn't really show that well. I should have brought the other one in, but this is what I literally have on the needles. One of the things I have on the needles, it's a fingerless mitt that I released like many, many, many years ago, and I'm just revamping the pattern and reknitting it. It's called Chalice Cable Hand Warmers, and so I'm going to be re-releasing that one soon. And I've also been really obsessed with Tunisian crochet recently, which I picked up not very long ago, but I already have 2 things designed in it that I'm working on getting out there. So
Nice. Are you redoing the mitts to add anything to the pattern, or just kind of giving some fresh photography, new yarn, that
mostly
kind of thing?
for fresh photography and like, but I also want to make the pattern a little bit more user friendly. And one of the things I'm really trying to do as I'm releasing independent patterns again is a lot of how-to videos. So I have a couple that I'm going to be doing for this Atticus vest pattern. They might not be ready right on the launch day, but soon. And so I want to make, and the cable in the mitts is it's kind of unusual. You can either do it if you use a cable needle for your cables. One of the directions you have to, like, you basically need 2 cable needles, and you kind of, it's fun. I think it's fun. Some people might think it's insane, but you can also do it if you cable without a cable needle, which is one of my favorite things to teach people. You can just rearrange the stitches, so it's fun.
Nice. Yeah, those video tutorials become more and more popular and are super helpful. And more people putting out videos of the same thing, I think, is super helpful.
Yeah, sometimes you just need a different angle, or somebody explains it. One of the things that I've been loving about starting to get back into doing a lot of teaching is that it reminds me that like different words like hit people. Like, I was teaching a crochet class recently, and one of the people in the class like had never crocheted before, so just making a stitch was like a big deal for her. And as I was explaining how to like get the yarn through, I said, like, you kind of scoop it, and that helped her. And now like she's like, and she's a friend of mine too, but it's just funny because she'll post, like, she saw me post like a crochet video, and she wrote "scoop it" in the comments, which I loved. But I was like, oh, I never explained it that way before, but like now I'll add that to my repertoire of all the different ways you try to say things.
Yeah, you just scoop it. Yeah. I used to teach a brioche class, and a lot of people would come to the class having tried brioche before and failed. And a lot of people, because Stephen West had so many brioche videos at the time, I would ask people, have you tried doing videos? And they're like, yeah, I watched a Stephen West video. And I was like, okay, now go watch an Andrea Mowry version. Because she does the exact same thing, but explains it in a completely different way.
Yeah.
And neither's wrong, neither's right. It's just, how you hear things. Yeah, that was something I picked up on teaching. And that's why I'm excited about so many designers starting to do these video tutorials. So if they need to find that scoop it, they can find that with you, where other people are, drag it or whatever. That just doesn't click.
Yeah. I think too that, I think we're finally starting to figure out the different ways that we have to explain, like that we have the different ways of reaching the audience who doesn't necessarily have, you know, their aunt or grandmother or somebody who, you know, has been knitting forever, like sitting next to them. Like, I think it's been a long time that we've been trying to like thread that needle, no pun intended, of like, you know, wanting to help give people the tools to you know, make really beautiful things and carry on the craft and like and further the craft in like new ways, while you know, like when they don't have that like lineage necessarily in their family or wherever, how people used to get the advanced knowledge, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not handed down generation to generation.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't have a grandmother to teach me how to crochet.
My
So,
grandmother only taught me like that.
but yeah, I mean, all of my crochet has been trying to figure it out on video, and yeah, I'm very novice at it for that exact reason. Um, until recently, I didn't have a lot of people in my life who did crochet. But yeah, the local guild here has a lot of crocheters. So
Nice. That's so great.
if I ever decide I want to get into crochet again beyond my granny squares, uh, I've got some resources
You
now.
do a lot with granny squares.
Talk about popular.
I
Those things are
know. It's
everywhere.
wild. It's really wild. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. But at least we have videos and don't have to just still like I mean, you know, again, like dating myself, but like I remember when I was learning like knitting beyond like the basics, like I was there with like, you know, a book and like trying to like figure out from the illustrations in the book like what I was supposed to do. I mean, and luckily like it comes pretty naturally to me, so I was able to figure it out that way, but like I think it's really hard for most people to learn that way.
Yeah, and I doubt the illustrator knows how to knit.
I know. I think sometimes about like how did that illustration, like what went into that? That's interesting.
Yeah.
So anyway.
All right. Well, before we move on, let's do the lightning round. You ready?
Okay.
All right. Have you read these? Did you read them?
I did, but I don't really remember them because I have a Swiss cheese brain.
All right. Cats or dogs?
Cats.
Coffee or tea?
Oh, I can't choose all
Are
of the
they different
caffeine.
times of the day?
What's that?
Do you prefer one at a different time of the day?
Yeah, I usually start with coffee and then go to tea.
Okay. Sweet or savory?
Savory.
Metal or bamboo needles?
Metal.
Do you have a least favorite stitch?
A least favorite stitch?
Stitch or technique?
Like most people, I'm not terribly fond of doing intarsia. But I had to make a how-to video about it a few months ago, and I was like, oh, this is okay. I'll do any stitch.
I learned how to do intarsia for the first time, not knowing that it was intarsia.
That's the way to learn things.
I was that novice of a knitter, but I have done one Stephen West mystery, and it had intarsia.
That's the way. You gotta surprise them with it. I love that. Good job, Stephen West.
Yeah, I had no idea what I was doing. I just followed the directions.
People get mad at me because I put purl through the back loop in a lot of my patterns. I love a twisted ribbing, and people get really mad at me about it. So I'm trying to avoid it, but it's so pretty.
And twisted rib is good. And then, what are you currently watching or reading?
Oh, well, so I've been trying to read books again because my ability to read books basically died with the iPhone. But my gateway into reading books again is Agatha Christie novels. So I'm trying to read them more or less in order. I'm like bouncing between Poirot and Miss Marple, and then the ones that are like neither of those. And I'm reading them in those three categories. I'm like reading them in order. So that's what I'm reading. And The Residence, also on the mystery kick. The Residence on Netflix is it's basically like an eight episode show. and I don't remember the name of the woman who stars in it, and she's so brilliant. She was on Orange is the New Black, and she's so good. What is her name? Anyway, it's a mystery that takes place in the White House, like in the residence part of the White House, and it's so fun.
Might have to check that out. I have I have been watching The Gilded Age.
Oh, I keep hearing about it, and
Do it. Do it. Start at the beginning.
I know I need to. I need to. My husband and I started watching it like in the very like when it started, and he was not into it, but I was kind of into it, and I need to like stick to my guns or just like remember to watch it when he's not home.
Yeah, no, it's good. And the last episode of season 3 drops Sunday, and I'm like, now what am I gonna watch?
I know. Christine Baranski apparently was just in Newport, like promoting the show for Rhode Island. Rhode Island is such a small state. It's like a really big deal when celebrities come here.
Well,
Jake Gyllenhaal was also shooting a film down the street for me, an M. Night Shyamalan film down the street for me. So that's exciting.
Well, there's lots of Newport in The Gilded Age, especially
heard.
after the first season.
Okay.
So
Makes sense.
yeah, yeah, it's good. I think you'll like it. So thank you for your time.
Yeah,
thank you for
thanks
joining
having
me. And the Atticus pattern will be out on the 14th, so
Yes.
in 2 days. So it'll be out before the podcast is out. And it will be available on Ravelry.
Yes, it will be available on Ravelry. I don't currently have another site set up yet for offering patterns, but I know not everybody loves Ravelry, so I am working on that, but that might not be ready for Thursday. So it will definitely be on Ravelry on Thursday.
Okay. Well, we'll put it temporarily up on our website then. People can grab it there. Because you sent me the pattern today, right?
I did.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, we've got kits for it in lots of different colors. I think the smallest sizes need 3 skeins. Is that right?
Sounds right.
2 or 3. And then it goes up to, I think the largest sizes needed 5.
The largest, which is a 72, took 7 skeins.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 3 to 7. But most of the sizes 3 to 5. Like, yeah. It's like 3, 4, 4, 4, 5, 5, 5, 6, 6, 7.
Nice. Well, I'm excited to see people cast these on and wear them. We got ours from the sample knitter one day last week, and I just put it on today, and I was like, "Ooh, I really like it."
Yay! I'm so glad you like it.
Take it out of the package and check it out. So, well, Allison, it was great to spend some time with you. Thank you for designing something with Lada. I'm happy and pleased to hear that you love it as much as I do. And yeah, hopefully we can find a project in the future to work on. Maybe we'll get some accessories in your...
Yeah. I have lots of ideas. I like a lot of your yarns, so I'm very... Just the time, really.
Yep, I hear you.
All the things, all the time.
Yeah. Did you take any of our Coleman when we were together?
I didn't get a skein of it or anything, but I had like the little tiny sample and was definitely really interested in that one too. So yeah, I may have to bug you for some of that sometime soon.
Yeah. Barocco was actually where I went to first when I launched Coleman. I think it was Xena.
Oh yeah.
So Barocco, talking about like designing patterns to sell yarn, had done a ton of really great patterns for, I think it was Xena, which was a DK weight linen yarn. So those were a lot of our early pattern suggestions for Coleman before we started to build that catalog and find other places to get it, but to get those. But yeah, the first Coleman pattern I did was a Barocco pattern by Amy Christophers.
Awesome.
So
Remind me, Coleman, is it all linen or is it a blend?
it's a silk linen.
Silk linen. That's, yeah. I gotta get my
Glows.
hands on some of that.
Like it's right there glowing. All right, Allison, thank you again so much for your time, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. Good morning. Welcome back to Here's the Stitch. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Allison. Really enjoyed getting to know her a little better and learning about her design process and her design career. And she is just a lovely person. If you were not on our monthly open stitch night last night, I would encourage you to put that on your calendar. It's a really fun night. It's a small group, and you really do get to interact with whoever our guest is. And our guest on Here's the Stitch on the podcast is also generally our guest in the open stitch night. So I would very much encourage you to put that on your calendar. It's always the second Tuesday of the month. That may change in November, but we'll get there in November. Like I said, I really enjoyed chatting with her. So let's get to the rest of the podcast this morning. If you are completely distracted by the kittens behind me, I greatly apologize. I had no intention of letting them down here into the office. But one of them was peeing on the carpet on the other side of the gate that was preventing them from coming down here. And they've now been allowed down here, I think this is the second week, and no pee. So I think I have to relent. But they have made best friends with the hummingbirds outside the window here. So you may be able to see that in the corner there, the hummingbird feeder. And the hummingbird is far smarter than the kittens. The hummingbird knows that they can't get them and just sits there and taunts them. So makes for tired kittens in the evenings and slightly distracting days here in the office. So that is what's happening here if you see the chaos happening. They appear to currently just be on watch. But yeah, so let's jump into the knitting. I honestly haven't had a ton of knitting time. I was doing a good bit of travel, and we've been doing some projects around the house, and yeah, just hasn't translated into a ton of knitting time. Things have been super busy here in the office as we finish up all of our obligations from H&H and start prepping for fall. We had yesterday a very long conversation about India Untangled and SAF yesterday. So yeah, it is August 13th and we are very much working on October. So I'm even starting to talk about next year. But yeah, so like I said, I haven't had a ton of knitting time. But I do have some things to show. So starting off, the only finished objects I have are swatches. We are a very heavy sample dyer. Like we have tons and tons of samples. And really it's just honestly kind of getting out of control. We have so many samples. But as new things come out, doesn't mean we don't want to show those things. So, I've kind of made the shift to doing swatches to show off some new patterns. And that's what we did with the Ooey Gooey. We originally put up the Ooey Gooey kits and the day the pattern launched, and they just didn't really get much traction. Decided to go ahead and do some swatches. So I really liked the idea of doing Ooey Gooey with two tonals. So this was the first idea, and this is using Lada. The pattern calls for Sport, so of course we're going to recommend Lada. So the color work here is out of Rusty Pickup Truck, and then the body of the sweater would be out of Hugo. I love this one. Absolutely love this one. The second one I did was very much inspired by our friend Brenna. And this is Sundrop and Paloma. You may remember this winter, Brenna did a winter albina out of similar colors. So this is Paloma. I'm actually wearing Fierce, which is what Brenna's sweater is out of. And you can't see there is a difference. Paloma does have a lot of orange undertones in it. Paloma is more of a coral than a true pink. And then we wanted to get a fall one in there. Also something a little more masculine looking. So we went with the Tobacco Barn body and the color work in Fort. So not that colors have genders, but this tends to feel more masculine. And then the pattern does call for spin cycle, and of course that's a color changing yarn, and we have our own color changing yarn. It is called Lottie. If you're not familiar with it, it's a DK weight. Our friends at Feederbrook Farm make it for us, and it is very much in line with the Queen City color palette and what we do. So I did a lot of color management in this swatch, but that's because the circumference is so small and I really wanted to show the way the colors would fade. So if I had kept going on just this little swatch without doing the color management, the whole thing would have been yellow, which I didn't want that to be the representation. So I wish I had done a little more management on the green part here, so we could have gotten to more of the pinks. But yeah, so that is a swatch. Those are swatches for Ooey Gooey. Yeah. And then, so let's talk a little bit about my trip to New Jersey. So I will be at Do You Knit September 12th and 13th for their anniversary party. Brenna went with me last year for that, and it was a huge success. So we're going back again this year. Brenna tested a pattern called Midge in a new book. All right, the book is called Feel Notes, and it is by Olga Patano. The book is currently up for pre-order. Karen will have the book at Do You Knit the weekend we were there. And like I said, Brenna got to test knit one of the sweaters, and it's called Midge. And Brenna's version is obviously bright and cheerful and colorful. For those of you who don't know who Brenna is, she's a friend who lives locally, who loves color and has impeccable color taste. So if you're looking for bright, colorful knitting, Brenna's your person to follow. So Brenna picked out this combination. So this is, again, a swatch for the Midge sweater that is in the Field Notes book that will be dropping soon. And then the purple in this is Pigment of My Imagination. This is Do You Knit's exclusive colorway for Lada. And then the bars, the columns are Hugo. And then the little dashes are Marigold. And I love this. I am so tempted to make one of these. I love it. It's gorgeous. And then we also did a swatch that is very similar to the pattern photo. So this is again at a Rusty pickup truck. And then the neutral column here is actually using Promenade. Promenade is not a color we do on Lada. It is a superwash color. And I tried doing it with the white, and the sun drop dashes just got completely lost. So I wanted to try the promenade, and you'll see why in a minute, why I had some promenade on Lada. But yeah, the promenade just knocks the starkness of the white off the yarn. So it very, very much still reads white, but just has a tiny, tiny hint of pink in it. So that's the second swatch. And then I started the third swatch. And this one is also really fun. So this one uses Tobacco Barn for the columns, teal feather for the main color, and then again, Paloma for the little dashes. So, and I think that one's going to be beautiful too. So we'll have kits for that at New Jersey, and they will also be on the website before we go. So that's it for finished objects. Works in progress is minimal. So the first thing I have is a little bit of progress on my sock. This is my travel companion. This lives in my bag wherever I'm traveling. So it is some 716 yarn. And it is, can I trade in the children for more cash? And it, like you can tell, it's a self-striping. I love where the color change kind of bleeds together and you get these little purple blips. Super fun. Yeah, so that's my sock. No rush on that. My sock obligations for the year are complete. If I get a second pair of socks done, great. Although my husband has claimed these, so his brother has no chance of getting a second pair of socks, to be honest. The other thing I have been working on is woolen honey. This is using Lada. I am using the colorway Tobacco Barn. And I have done a ton of modifications to this pattern. So first of all, I haven't done the neckline. There's lots of comments on Ravelry about the neck being too small. So what I did was I cast on for the second size, and I followed the instructions for the second size until my increases got me to the number of stitches for the next size down. I don't remember the exact numbers, but just for easy explanation, say the smallest size was 25 stitches and the next size up went to 35 stitches. I just left those those 10 stitches out of the increases. I just stopped the increases early is what I did. I also moved the sleeves. So the pattern, the pattern has you separate the sleeves after you finish the honeycomb chart. So it gives you this kind of poncho-y bat wing T-Rex arms kind of situation, which isn't what I wanted. So I have separated the sleeves early. I am working on this sleeve because I want to finish both sleeves and try it on before I go any further on the body. I will possibly also do the neck, do the collar before I go on to the rest of the body. And that is because I've also modified the body. I am doing bust darts. It is not something I have ever done before, but it is something I have been wanting to try. In all of our professional photography of our knitwear that you see on our website, it is incredibly obvious, at least to me, that my sweaters aren't parallel to the ground. And that is because I have a larger chest. So there is a strategy for dealing with that, and it is called bust darts. What I think has happened, though, is I got a little carried away. So you can see here, the shorter line is the back of the sweater. And then the front of the sweater is the lower line. And that is a reflection of how much extra fabric I have added to the front with the bust darts. And I just think it's too much. I don't know that it's too much, but I think it's too much. And instead of ripping back the bust darts, and actually, as I lay it here, let me measure it real quick. So it's a 2-inch difference. And the body has been steamed blocked. And 2 inches is actually exactly what my calculations told me I should do. So, like I said, I'm going to finish the sleeves, finish the collar, so I can properly try it on and see if, in fact, I have gotten carried away with the bust darts. And if I have, I will rip those back and start over. Or just rip back so I don't have as many. And honestly, it's like 2 inches of 2 inches of knitting to rip back. So that is my heavily modified wool and honey that I have been working on. It was actually something we talked about last night on our open stitch night. Talked about ripping back, and I have no problems ripping back. I have knit the yoke on this sweater 3 times. And then I have knit the bust darts twice, and will potentially knit them a 3rd time. And yeah, I want my sweaters to fit a particular way, especially if I'm making them. When I have our sample knitters make me sweaters, I obviously am not this picky and specific, but if I'm going to make something, I want it to fit just the way I want it to fit. And those tend to be the sweaters I gravitate more towards in my personal daily life of wearing sweaters. I generally wear the ones I have made, not the ones sample knitters have made for us. I save the sample knitter ones for when I'm in the booth. It also helps keep the samples that live down here versus the things I have knit that live upstairs. Helps keep them a little cleaner. And honestly, that's it. That's all of my knitting. That is all I've got to show. I did do a very, very, very small amount of shopping, and none of it was yarn. When I was at Make Do in Cincinnati a couple weekends ago for the Heartland Yarn Crawl, I picked up a blanket, and I also picked up a diffuser for the yarn band. So it's a little rainbow that you can put essential oils on, and then it's hanging from the rearview mirror in the van with some lavender on it. The maker of the macrame rainbow is a cord and branch. There's links for it that will be at the bottom here. I actually met her several years ago in Greenville, South Carolina at a show. She's based in the Pacific Northwest. I think she's in Portland. And she was doing that thing that vendors do of trying something new. So she wanted to try and do an East Coast show. So she did the experiment of how does she fly with a booth. So she had several suitcases and everything packed down into those suitcases. So that strategy is actually something I'm going to try for New Jersey. I am going to try and pack all of the yarn in 2 suitcases so it can come back with me, so it can then go to DFW the following Wednesday. So, all right, and then the last thing I wanted to chat about for the podcast is vests. So, as you saw with my conversation with Allison, we we have released what she's called a popover. The name is Atticus. It's what I was wearing in the first part of the video, and I think I showed it during our interview. But yeah, just the proliferation of these sleeveless knitted items really just got me curious and trying to figure out why they are so incredibly popular. So, so here's what I found out. The knitted vest, the sweater vest, actually came to be during World War One. It was something that family members back home could make as a warm layer to then send to their soldiers. And so that's where they started. That's where they came from. And then from there, they became more popular in the 1930s and became more of what we recognize today with the more fitted shoulder and looking more like tank top style, the smaller vest. And those were still predominantly for men. They were wearing them as a warm layer while playing sports. So tennis, rowing, golf, that kind of thing. So yeah, they were more athleisure at that point, while still trying to look put together. They were a predominantly middle to upper class garment in the 1930s. And then in the 50s, they became popular in Fair Isle. That was something that was incredibly popular in Europe, but also became popular here in the United States. And then in the 70s, they really just kind of exploded. That is when they became something everybody was wearing. It was an opportunity to experiment with color, with texture, with fringe. And they became popular with women and men then. And they also then became part of the workwear or apparel for women going to work. It was a nice warm layer, polished look for women entering the workforce in the 70s. And then in 2019, they kind of made a comeback. And a lot of that has been attributed to the British singer Harry Styles. Harry wears knitted vests all the time, and they are outrageous. They are fun, they're colorful, they've got texture, and they're just a really great way to express your style. So that is when they've started creeping back up in popularity. And I think in our world, the world of hand knitting and Ravelry, I think some of it is just an extension of the popularity of the summer sweater. So many summer sweaters either have cap sleeves or have no sleeves. They are just kind of oversized and boxy, so you do end up with kind of that cap sleeve look, which is what the Atticus Pop-over is. If you go to Ravelry and look at the sweater vests, they are predominantly made by European and Scandinavian designers. So it is something that is a very popular garment in Europe and has started to increase in popularity here in the United States. For a lot of reasons. Like I said, Harry Styles bringing them to fashion, as well as there's no sleeves to it. And they really do function very, very well. You can layer them under your winter coat without, getting all of the extra sleeve in your coats. I personally find a vest is generally enough of a winter layer for me. And yeah, they keep your core warm, and they really do function incredibly well. So, yeah, they are also, like I said, much like or in all of our handmade garments, they're incredibly versatile. You can layer them, you can wear them by themselves, you can wear them over a button-up shirt for a more preppy look. You could wear it over a long sleeve tee for a more casual, relaxed look. The really oversized ones, again, are going to give you that that more relaxed feeling. And they just allow you to play with texture in a way that can be less intimidating because, with a vest, especially if it's going to be layered, there's no reason to do the texture on the back. You can just focus on that front panel. So they're a good place to play and experiment with texture. So our Atticus sweater or our Atticus vest is out by the time this podcast drops. It launches tomorrow in real world. And I hope you guys enjoy it. It was a great project to work with Alison on, and I'm really excited about it. So hers is at a rusty pickup truck, and fun anecdote about the name. So she really loved the name Rusty Pickup Truck and obviously loved the color as well. So to come up with a pattern name, she went to, I don't think it was ChatGPT. She went to an AI source and put in, asked what characters, I think it was what characters drive pickup trucks. And of course, she got a whole slew of answers. And one of the answers was Atticus from To Kill a Mockingbird. So that's where the name came from. And yeah, that's really all I've got. Oh, it's not all I got for you. So I have grand dreams of making myself the Neutrino flock sweater, the red Princess Diana inspired one. That will get cast on as soon as the pattern's ready. I'm hoping that pattern will be ready in the next couple of days here. So I will do that just as shown on the pattern, the scarlet and then the white sheep with a little black sheep. And then I have plans to cast on a new gooey. So that is why the promenade had already been dyed up. So this is, do I have white? I do. So this is the difference in the white and the promenade. So you can see it really doesn't take on a lot of color. It just knocks down the starkness of the white. And I am pairing that with Ghost Ranch. So I am also incredibly excited to cast this on. But I really want to get at least the sleeves done on my Wool & Honey before I allow myself to cast on anything else. So I need to get to knitting. So yeah, the goal is to have an ooey gooey for Saturday at Rhinebeck and a flock sweater for Friday at India Entangled. Is my plan. So we'll see if it happens. Yeah, and that's all I've got for you for August. We will see you in September, and I hope you have a great month. Bye.